Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be walking you through this gouache painting that I finished yesterday. I've been planning on painting this reference photo for a long time now, and it's one of those reference photos where I would save for the future, where I feel like my skills would finally keep up with me and I can finally paint what I want to do with it in my head. Usually it sort of backfires because I always overestimate myself and paint it even when my skill level isn't just there yet. So this time I'm actually really happy to say that it went exactly how I thought it would be in my head. So I'm really excited to show you guys this one. The reference photo itself I saw on Pexels. It will be in the description with my other reference photos. I am still using the last page in my Cotman watercolors sketchbook. It's the absolute last one that I have, and so you see my sketch is actually over a few older sketches that I just tried to erase. The paints that I'm using are my Holbein traditional gouache. Most of them are from the Irudori fall set, but then some of them are also just colors that I have from my basic 12 color set. What I really wanted for this piece as soon as I saw it was to sort of bathe it in sunshine more, because I really like how she's posed and it sort of looks like she's soaking in the light, and I really wanted to just push that further and add in some very warm, very bright colors to the piece. So when you look at the reference photo, there's really not much that I changed. Sort of the meat of the photo I have kept, so the model and the pose is the same. The only things that I changed are the outfit and a little bit of the lighting, but mostly just the outfit and the colors. So as far as working off of reference photos goes, this is actually the easy way to do it. So I wasn't really having that much of a hard time in the planning stage. I sort of did the whole thing digitally over top of the reference photo that I already had, and just playing around with the lighting on my iPad to see which kind of colors would work well together. So after I got to the kind of look that I wanted, it was then just a matter of picking out the same colors that I have in my selection of gouache, and it's so much easier for me now that I have that many colors, because I could just really handpick what is the closest to the study that I did beforehand, and just a few colors that I don't have I could just mix with the many colors that I picked out. You guys might have noticed that when I first started painting, I actually tried to paint her face straight away without any sort of underpainting underneath, and I realized very early on that wasn't the look that I wanted for the piece. And so what I actually did was do a very bright orange and yellow underpainting for the rest of her body, and I sort of just glazed over with the same colors on her face later on to pull everything together. But for her body, it's a very different process than how I painted her face. I really wanted this whole thing to glow, and so I needed that very vibrant underpainting to sort of show through after I've layered in the gouache over it. So I did that for a little bit of her face, but mostly for her body. That's how I had to do it. It's so much easier now that I have so many colors to choose from. It really almost cuts the time in half, not just in figuring out how to get to the colors that I want, but also mixing colors in gouache takes a lot of time. And I really believe that if I didn't have this many colors, that it would take me at least 2 days more to get to the same, to finish this piece. As it stands, this one only took me about 3 days when I started painting, because the planning itself only took a few hours for me to do. So much easier now to finish a full piece with this many colors that I have in my selection. Before, I would think that I only needed the bare necessities, and in some ways mentally that is still kind of true, because it's easier to just mix the colors that you want without so many different options. But just physically, it's so much harder to mix the paint with gouache, because you're working with thick paint, and so there's lots of cleanup to do in your brushes in between mixing different colors. And also just maneuvering the thick paint, it takes a lot of time. So it still stands that it's easier to work with very limited and even just the bare minimum of colors when you're working with maybe something like watercolors, because you're just working almost with water consistency. Not with gouache. If you can just get as many colors as you need, it's gonna make your life so much easier. So picking and choosing the color palettes is something that I get asked about. Where did I learn to do it? And it's really just practice. A lot of it also has to do with learning color theory, but really what helped me the most is just working off of reference photos, like what I'm doing right now. So when you look at this painting, it might look like it's so different from the reference photo, but really I'm just picking the colors that I see on it, and most of it is just upping up the saturation, and I'm making sure that where I would bump up the saturation, I'm making sure that everything else around it isn't as bright as that one color. And on some areas where I'm not upping up the saturation, I will keep the saturation level but maybe change up the hues into something that is different from the main color in the piece. So since this one is mostly yellow, I actually changed the grays in the photo into a very bright lavender, because purple and yellow are complementary colors, and so I want them to sort of make each other stand out a little bit more. So really, in the end, it's just practice. What I'm doing right now is also practice for when I have to build up my own scenes. I'm still not good at that, but at least now I know where to start, and maybe some of the principles I have learned through copying photos, I would be able to bring them over into building up my own scenes. So in general, what helped me the most in choosing my own color palettes for my paintings is really just learning the very basics of color theory, and then studying pictures that I really like, sort of deconstructing what I like about them, and then tweaking some of them to work in a painting versus a photograph. Because I really do still think that what looks good in a painting isn't always going to look good in photos. Because if you take some of these exact same colors and edit them into the reference photo, it would look really wrong. Because with the photographer, when they directed the shoot, I'm sure they lit it up in a way that would look good as a photo and not necessarily something that would look good as a painting. For her outfit, I was really clear on what I wanted, but then I also was being careful to not make the whole piece be too provocative. I think that's the right word. I really wanted this photo to be beautiful, but in a very sort of feminine gaze. I wanted to add in these very colorful flowers, but I also don't want those flowers to sort of take away from the overall piece. And so, except for the yellow flowers, the purples and the greens are very desaturated, and I also didn't want them to be too dark that their shapes would stand out too much from the yellow flowers. So overall, I just used these very bright but also very desaturated flowers, and I really like it. I sort of had to go through the lavender ones multiple times because sometimes they would dry still too vibrant for the rest of the flowers, and I didn't want that. So even though this one had a lot of planning involved, it wasn't something that I finished as fast as you guys might think from the editing. There were lots of adjustments that I had to do throughout the whole thing that in the editing process didn't really look like much of a difference from before I did them. So there's so many of those little adjustments that I just cut completely for the final video. My course for this whole piece was really just very linear, but that doesn't mean that that line wasn't long still. So yeah, in my paintings, even when they are planned as much as this one was, and even though everything went according to that plan, it could still take me a while to finish. And so I really hope you guys like this one. This is probably one of my favorite paintings that I've done to this day. And so I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you to my patrons for supporting me. I will be seeing you guys again soon.